actually 5 years ago next month that we took the Little Admiral down because it was clear that he was damaged in some way. I must admit that at the time I didn't expect it would take 5 years before we were able to at least have him back here. And furthermore, I wasn't expecting that we would be saying that he is retiring, because he is not going back, as you can see. He is now going to be here. That, of course, is on the advice of the Conservators. He's been doing his duty every day up there on the wind and the rain, as well as the baking sun, and it's taken its toll. So it's time for him to retire. The good news is he's going to leave the job to some young upstart who is even now being manufactured somewhere. And it'll be his role to stand on the top of the clock. And I'm not sure how many people appreciate, but also track the sun with his sight star. So those who are in the know will realise as they go up and down Coney Street that he's pointing in different directions, because that is him following the sun, even when the sun is not shining. It's a pity, I think, that visitors don't necessarily realise that. When we took him down, he was splitting apart, because it's not a solid piece of wood, but 4 pieces of walnut, I think, Morgan, laminated together, and much repaired. In addition, there were some really serious holes in it. Nonetheless, we thought we could do a repair job on it, but when we applied for permission to go ahead, it was suggested that we have a second opinion from a professional wood restorer. This sounds easy, but it took about a year to work out how to find someone like that. And in the end, we hit upon applying for advice at the Royal Naval Dockyard at Portsmouth. We could find plenty of people who restore wood indoors, but when you wanted someone who was an expert on wood that has to withstand the elements, that proved so much more difficult. But of course, wooden sailing ships have figureheads, don't they? And why didn't we think about that straight away? But so we approached the dockyard for advice, and the senior conservator there was absolutely excellent and supportive. When we sent pictures, she thought it was suffering from death watch beetle, and that meant that it needed treating before anybody else would even examine it, let alone diagnose the problems. And treatment involved deep freezing for months, we were told, and hardly anybody had the facilities to do that. So you can imagine this is getting more and more of a difficult challenge. And they said, by the way, did you say York? Because have you heard of someone called York Archaeology? Because they have all the kit, and they do this deep freezing. And actually, their senior conservator was someone trained by us down here in Portsmouth. What a coincidence. What a brilliant coincidence that we had York Archaeology and Morgan right on the doorstep. Why didn't we know that before? So that's what we did. I need to say, Little Admiral took his turn in the queue to be deep frozen, and after he had been given the treatment, Morgan here was able to take him to the workshops and discover that there was no death watch beetle there at all anyway. He was just rotten inside all the way through, and more or less fell apart on the workshop. However, we did get him x-rayed, we did have the paint all analysed, and we had a 3D dimensional scan done, which is what we've had to use for the replica. And all that has obviously taken time, and the financial support of our Feoffees, for which we are deeply, deeply grateful. The Little Admiral will now live here in the cabinet, which is a controlled cabinet, as you can see in the museum, and it'll preserve him in his current state indefinitely. And I can say more, but the measurements and scans that we've had done through York Archaeology means that we will replace him on the clock with a bronze casting that Morgan will shall I say, decorate. He will be painted up and gilded in just the same way, so that the passerby and your good self will not notice the difference when he is finally manufactured and placed there. But that's why it's taken too long. That's why we've had letters in the local press, which I've always ignored, saying what's happened to Little Admiral. It was just one step at a time, and often very difficult to work out what to do next, until we found an expert advisor and practitioner here. I'm so grateful for the cooperation and indeed leadership that we've had from Morgan. We owe her an incredible debt for the outcome, I'm very happy to say. But that's an explanation. Thank you for listening to me. People often ask what's going on, and I've been typing it to the past simply to stop the questions and the unfortunate publicity. But I think now it's time to reveal Morgan's handiwork, don't you, Andrew?
Absolutely.
Let's do that. The theory is that this will just...
But I get to speak because I'm sort of the guy that paid for it along with the I mean, Anthony touched on how long it's taken. Without a doubt, Anthony's been the driving force of all the arrangements, and we just get, sort of semi-monthly reports on progress over the last 4 or 5 years. But it actually goes back a lot longer than that, when the Little Admiral was in a state of disrepair, and it goes back to Margaret and Anthony together, arranging for the repairs, the ad hoc, what turned out to be ad hoc repairs before we got to this set. I'd like to echo again the thanks to Morgan for the expert work that she has put towards this. And we're very proud as Feoffees to have paid for this, because we paid for it out of a bequest of one of our charities from George Kirby. And some of you may remember the shop that was at the entrance to Coney Street alongside the Mansion House. It was originally known as Kirby and Nichols, that's Kirby from Kirby. And their original shop was number 2 and number 4 Coney Street, which number 2 is next to the Ivy, and that has a significance for us because we're Feoffees, because we own property in York, and that property is number 2, Coney Street, what used to be Bergen's Chemist. And the shop next door, which was part of the original Kirby House, was number 4, which was my father's men's outfitters shop, my grandfather's men's outfitters shop. I think it was destroyed during the same raid that they did for this church, but they built it up again, luckily for me. And it's also special because I think this church is the best hidden gem in the whole of the city of York. Not least because I'm wearing a merchant tailor's tie, and you've got a lovely tribute to a chap who was 3 times Master of the Merchant Tailors of York, as I was, and Barry, one of my co-fees, was. Mind you, he managed to have 5 wives, according to the description, and Barry and I are slightly behind on his capabilities. And the other connection is George Kirby was an old Peterite, like myself and like Alistair Barron, one of the other Feoffees. He was also a president of the Old Peterite Club, I discovered recently. And today I've just come from the Minister wearing going to be practicing the prayer for commemoration of St Peter's. So I guess you can understand why it means a lot to me to be here. So anyway, I've said enough. Thank you very much to the whole team who's put together. Thank you to the church for going through all the processes for the faculty. And it's not the end, because it won't be the end until we've got the council permission to stick the replica up on the clock, and we can see it recirculating. But I know there's so much interest in York to see the Little Admiral back. I predict that there'll be a tremendous amount of interest to come and see this. So thank you all, and I hope that the parishioners and everybody else is as proud as I am of this restoration.
Thank you very much.
It was a real privilege to work on the Little Admiral. I'm a York local myself now, and I knew how very well loved he was. So it's a tremendous pressure to make sure I did a good job. It was fascinating with conservation on it because we learned so much. So there's been a Little Admiral about the clock since 1778. I can't tell you that it's the original Little Admiral, but he's certainly older. So we found out that he has cast iron legs, presumably to stop him from toppling over the crowds while he's telling a tale. There was a bit of a concern that they might have corroded, and that was causing the wood to split apart. So he actually took a trip to Barnsley and was x-rayed. He's a bit big to fit in one of our x-ray machines. And all the metal was perfect, which makes such a change to what I usually say about metal dug up from York. We found out that the wood is made from walnut. We also found out that he's had quite a few previous repairs. So he'd lost his left arm at one point, and then he'd also lost his right arm at one point. And then during conservation, he lost both arms temporarily. And then we also found out that the colour scheme had changed over the years. There were multiple layers of paint. Some of them contained lead, so definitely an older method of paint. And then we also found out that originally he'd been gilded. So it was wonderful when it finally came to the conservation, because we could put all this information to good use and make sure he was re-gilded and make sure the colour scheme was the most accurate. And hopefully he will be around for very much longer. He was incredibly rotted. So he has been painstakingly consolidated over and over. It's a strange process where you're either injecting consolidant in with sort of medical syringes, or you're painting it on and waiting until it stops absorbing and just tapping the wood. And when it stops sounding quite so hollow, you know you're almost there. And then he was also quite extensively filmed. So he was not in his best form as he was in the laboratory, but I'm very, very glad that he's back here today. It has been such a massive piece of work from Anthony Hammersley particularly, like driving this project forward. And so many other people, apart from York Archaeology, were able to work on it. So he was 3D scanned by Heritage 360, who are based at York University, who 3D scan lots of different historical monuments or archaeological features. And using that 3D scan, that's what we're going to use to make the new replica. The Canterbury Clocks Company, who are the conservation team behind the maintenance of the clock, they were giving their input, particularly as to what material should the new Little Admiral be. And bronze was sort of decided because it's got the most chance of lasting a very long time, and then hopefully he won't need to be replaced again. And then, of course, bronze casts were making the model. So there were so many people who were involved, and everyone was so excited to be working on such a loved York monument. So I'm very glad to have been a part of it, and thank you very much to the Feoffees for funding it all.
or two things I would like to say first.
Of course.
First of all,
Jumped over. I'm sorry.
Anthony, to thank you for your hard work in writing. It has been mentioned, both Anthony and his late wife Margaret really have played such a huge part in the life of this parish and in driving, as has been acknowledged, this particular project. So he won't thank me for thanking him, but I do think we do need to acknowledge that.
I can say that Margaret remembered the clock and the Little Admiral from her school days and younger days here. She was determined to get it back.
She'd be very proud today of all that you've driven and achieved. I do have, as we're in a church, a small, short prayer of dedication. So before we continue to look and explore and enjoy the refreshments, let us pray. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of all ages. From eternity you have called us to be your people, giving us wisdom and talent with the passing of time. We praise you for this church and community, for the generations who have lived and worked in this parish, for all who have measured their days and hallowed their time by the sight of this statue atop of our clock. We praise you for the work of conservation and repair, for skill and craft to enable his return. We praise you for generous benefactors, for custodians of history and curators of art. Bless all who live and work in our parish today, and all who visit here to find your solace and peace. And as we gaze on the Little Admiral in the safety of this church, protect seafarers and all caught in the turbulence of life. May our time and the season of our lives find their dedication and perfection in you.